Okay, so welcome everyone again. Today we are going to talk about transgender and neurodiverse recruitment experiences. My name is Shreyas Datta. I'm the Insights and Content Analyst here at LGBT Great. My pronouns are he, they, and a bit of a background. I studied economics and politics in IR, and it was like social research intensive, and now I sort of do data research training at LGBT Great. We will have a couple of Slido polls. So please do scan the QR code. We want to keep you engaged. And honestly, no one wants to listen to me for that long. So, hey, it's good to have like engagement with the audience. And also, before I begin, if I do sound like Batman or Kurt Cobain, it's because I have a sore throat, not because I'm extremely cool. So unfortunate, but hey. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to talk about LGBT Great for a while. So we are the leading LGBTQ plus D&I organization in the financial services, and we offer quite a lot of services. One of them that you might be more familiar with is like our membership sort of business line, which is around off-the-shelf trainings, visibility initiatives, and generally community events and webinars, like the webinar that we're doing right now. And like, if you probably know this if you're dialing in, but one of our like a proprietary sort of indexing tool that we have for the financial services is called IBIT, and it sort of measures LGBTQ plus inclusion maturity for organizations. So yes, do check that out. A lot of companies have signed up for it, and we have a lot of members who actually sort of create that space where we can create a industry benchmark and sort of compare apples with apples. Moving on to LGBT Great Careers, a relatively newer business line. And we focus on talent attraction and sort of end-to-end talent solutions here. We have a job board. Anyone on my team currently, if you're watching this, please feel free to drop all the links so people can sort of access them. But yeah, we have a job board that you can sign up to as talent, as well as like we have LGBTQ plus inclusive employers who've been assessed. And yeah, we also launched Thailand Digest on Wednesday in partnership with BlackRock for the first edition. And please do read that. I think it was brilliant. And while we were writing it, I thought it was sort of very cool trends that are coming out in the recruitment sort of space. And moving on to advisory, that is again another newer sort of business line, but you might have seen, like, for example, our report, Seeing is Believing, which we did with Citi. That was sort of our thought leadership piece. And then we also do D&I transformation and health check projects. And currently, for example, we're working with another firm for like D&I data capture enhancements. So again, you can see that we offer quite a lot. And if you want to partner with us, just give us a shout or like reach out on one of the email IDs. I'm sure that my colleagues will drop in the chat. Okay, moving on to the session itself. Okay, today's agenda. The first thing that I wanted to say was this was our team's idea in terms of creating a webinar which sort of talked about recruitment, and obviously because it was I think Careers Week 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, and then this week is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. So happy Neurodiversity Celebration Week, everyone. And then there's International Transgender Day of Visibility on the 31st of March. So we sort of amalgamated all these aspects, and obviously we talk about quite a lot about trans identities in our other webinars, but we thought it would be good to sort of introduce neurodiversity as well. And I'll show you why neurodiversity is a very important sort of aspect within, or actually beyond and within, the LGBTQ plus community. So yeah, we will sort of explore that. We will have some data, again, some engagement of the polls, but the highlight of the webinar will 100% be the panel discussion. And I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, hopefully less. And then we will move on to the panel discussion with some brilliant panelists that we have today. Okay, so yeah, again, if you have not scanned the QR code, please do so, because we have some questions. Okay. The first question that we have here is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with neurodiverse identities? And I would love to see people's responses. So please do scan the QR code and let us know. Okay, there's a 1 and a 3. 3. Oh, good. Okay. I'm always so curious to see how people think about neurodiversity. Someone said 5, another 5. I'm proud of y'all. Um, so an average 3.4 currently, 4, 3. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing sort of 3 and 4, which I mean, I actually quite surprised by, because I always thought that neurodiversity was sort of in the shadows, and obviously as an evolving concept, it's not as explored. Yeah, 15 people have voted, and they say 4, and the average score is 3.3. That is interesting. Um, so I mean, and the people who have voted 5, please, I mean, jump in and also like build awareness on the chat if you see something that you want to raise. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Thank you for that. This is a brief introduction. Again, I think it's just unfair to cover neurodiversity within even 15, 20 minutes, but I'm going to try and give you the brief headline of what it is. Of course, there's some text on the slide itself. Neurodivergent is a term that describes people whose brains work or develop differently. Which basically means that different distribution in sort of skills, as well as differing struggles for these people. And then like there's quite a lot of debate around how, like, competing arguments, I would say, about how, like, if neurodiversity is entirely genetic, or sort of like the environment creates neurodiversity. And I think the answer is sort of both. Um, so the nature and nurture together sort of create neurodiversity, and there's some conditions obviously completely genetic, some completely environmental as well. I'm going to give you the headline version of it, and there's obviously quite a lot of research, as I said, that talks to different sort of schools, some biological, some psychosocial. But for example, in terms of data, pure data, about 1 in 6 people are neurodivergent, which is quite a big number. And if you like to see it in percentages, that's about 16.6%. And it's generally estimated 15 to 20%. Again, to keep it brief and short, I will mention like the 4 most diagnosed conditions. The first one is like ASD, the autism spectrum disorder. 1 to 1.6% globally, people are known to have ASD. Again, these are estimates. ADHD, 5%, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Quite a lot of people I personally know have ADHD and ASD as well. DCD, developmental coordination disorder, or previously known as dyspraxia. 6% of people worldwide are estimated to have it. And then dyslexia, one of the most common ones, about 10% are diagnosed dyslexics. Okay, so within neurodiversity, there's sort of 4 verticals that we talk about in terms of pure psychological perspectives. One is applied developmental neurominorities, clinical developmental neurominorities, acquired neurominority, and acquired neurominority, which is not potentially as transient. Again, these are sort of partially medical terms, partially psychological terms that I will not delve into, but in terms of like, obviously, because this is a workforce sort of specific target audience that we have today, I'm going to talk about some difficulties that people with, for example, the 4 most diagnosed neurodivergent conditions experience, and some of the skills that they possibly bring to the workforce. So, for example, people with ADHD have some like problems with time management sometimes, and teamwork as well sometimes, but the strengths lie in, for example, creative thinking and visual spatial reasoning. One person, like popular person you might know, is Leonardo da Vinci. A historical accounts of like an analysis of like his personality told us that apparently he had ADHD, which is interesting. So that's amazing. Moving on to autism. So a lot of people who are diagnosed with autism or fall under the autism spectrum disorder have social and communication difficulties and sort of need routines. But like sort of the strengths that many times they offer to the workplace are memory and reading, drawing, like specialized specific skills, and a lot of also because of routine and structure, they're really sometimes good at like language programming, like computer language programming. So there was a study about like how Silicon Valley has a lot of autistic people because they're brilliant in terms of like many times language programmings. Um, One famous person who you might know again is Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins has autism. Um, Moving on to dyslexia, some sort of problems that they have is like sort of reading comprehension, literacy, and organizing stuff. And but one of the strengths that they, for example, bring is entrepreneurialism. There was a stat around 25 to 30% multi-millionaires who were entrepreneurs were dyslexic as well, which is, I think, is a pretty cool stat. And Steve Jobs, for example, was dyslexic. um and then moving on to DCD, which is sort of developmental coordination disorder. Motor difficulties is one of the difficulties that they constantly face, but also have high verbal comprehension abilities many times. And Daniel Radcliffe is another example. So I just want to ground the sort of session in the fact that there are quite a lot of people who you know in the public arena who are neurodiverse actually, and very extremely successful. Um, and one thing that I also would like to sort of dispel is, I mean, I've personally heard a lot of people come to me and being like, oh, this is too sensitive, which I think is absolutely wrong. So if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, dyslexia was more sort of common, became more mainstream as literacy rates increased. ADHD became more prevalent with increasing sedentary lifestyles. And that's very interesting because agrarian sort of industrial economies, when they move to more sedentary sort of our desk jobs these days, ADHD also sort of increased, augmented in numbers. Autism increased as like social communications became more frequent and also very different. Sort of parasocial relationships are so common through social media these days. And DCD also sort of had a steep increase when day-to-day need for motor control and sort of complex machinery became more prevalent in normal sort of like common society. So, for example, driving. So yeah, it's just some of the things that like myths that we need to dispel around neurodiversity. Again, not going into too much detail. Moving on, why are we having this conversation as LGBT great? Because there is a significant overlap between neurodiverse and LGBTQ plus identities. I mean, if you look at the slide, you'll probably see that this like a meta-analysis of 641,860 people. As someone who does social research, that's huge meta-analysis, even for meta-analysis standards. But yeah, you see like all of these sort of statistics are more focused towards autistic people specifically. And one of the sort of conjectural theories as to why autistic people tend to be more LGBTQ plus is that because they're less inclined slash aware also of like societal norms and also really don't care, which I think is extremely cool. And hence they can express themselves more freely. And I feel that's amazing because I would like love to have that level of non-conformity in me. So, and the moment you don't care what others think, you actually can find yourself more genuinely. So I think that's pretty cool. And also, our own research actually found that so there was a huge research done. I'll talk about it in a bit, but 3 in 4 neurodiverse people were LGBTQ plus, and about 20% of LGBTQ plus people were neurodiverse, if you see it the other way around. So it's sort of like the ROAS community. If people joined the session on ROAS awareness, we talked about like how aromantic people are more likely to be asexual, and asexual people are also likely to be aromantic, but not as much. But again, there's a significant overlap. I'm just going to drink some water. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I am doing not too good on time. I'm going to quickly do this. This was a study that we did across 7 markets, 3 continents, 1,832 respondents. And I know I appreciate this is a lot of data for people who might not like that much data. But I want you to focus on trans data specifically here. And what we found out was nearly 1 in 4 trans people were not comfortable sharing information about their gender identity at any stage in the recruitment process. Um, and another interesting thing I personally found out while we were dissecting this data was that like more trans people who were Gen Z were more likely to share their gender identity data in the CV stage as well, which I think is very interesting because what it says is that Gen Z is becoming more comfortable in disclosing their data. Maybe they don't trust their employers, as we saw in an EY report recently released, but they're still like they will say it on their CV. They're sort of proud, and I love it, as I am also part of Gen Z. Moving on to the next slide. Even less comfort exists among candidates when it comes to sharing their neurodiversity data. And I mean, just this was just across the board. You can see that 1 in 4 were not feeling comfortable disclosing their neurodiversity data at any stage of the recruitment life cycle. And I mean, that that just shows how much further we have to go to actually have great data that can sort of catalyze inclusion in the workplace, especially in the recruitment process as well. And one thing that I extremely found interesting and personally relatable was 400 respondents out of the 1,800. I mean, that's about 20%, if not more. Said that they were not sure if they were neurodiverse, and neurodiversity and sort of self-diagnosis is such a big topic as well, which we might discuss in the panel discussion. But I personally feel if I had to fill out a form like that, I also say I'm not sure. And I personally think self-diagnosis is very important, but yeah, we'll go on to that. I thought that was interesting. Moving on, the final data slide. 1 in 5 people across our total sample had no concerns about data sharing, only 1 in 5 in general. But this dropped to 7% for our trans and neurodiverse respondents. So that's absolutely, like, that's extremely interesting, first of all. And if you see the graphs here, like the green is towering everywhere. And that towering is not good because these are sort of questions that, oh, why will you not be like, why would you not disclose your demographic/DNI data? So, for example, how the data will be used, concerns around data storage, about progression, like stigma, prejudice, discrimination, not having truly inclusive practices. These are all towering in the green space, which is trans and neurodiverse people. So again, that just shows how much we have to still work to make trans and neurodiverse people feel more included and make them feel confident in disclosing their DNI data. And ideally, we would move to a place where there will be no concerns at all across the board. But unfortunately, we are not there, not even close, I would say. Okay, moving on. Another Slido poll for you all. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your organization's maturity in terms of neuro-inclusivity? Please do fill in this poll. I would love to see your answers. I am seeing no responses at the moment. Ah, beautiful. Someone said 1. It's not a great response, but we'll take it. Someone else had 1. Okay, there's a 4. Wow. But an average of 2.4. That's not great. Ideally, we would like to see a 4 or 5, but hey. 10 people have responded. Score of 2.4. Not looking good. Increasing 2.5 and the absolute average. Yeah, some people said 4. That's good. I'd love to hear what your organization is doing in the chat for neuro-inclusivity, because I mean, others can take sort of the help through those policies as well. Okay, 14 people have answered, and we have 15 people. Thank you. And we have a 2.8 average. I'm not going to delay this anymore. I think the next slides. Okay, this is just skim through this slide. We just have some tips for creating an inclusive recruitment process. Again, we have absolutely like rigorous training in terms of neuro-inclusivity in the workplace through our advisory courses. So please do contact us if you still think that you need any support there. And we're going to touch upon all these points in the panel discussion, which I'm finally very happy to introduce to you my panel here. I think how we're going to do this is the first question I'm going to ask to everyone on the panel is going to be around intros and backgrounds. And then I'm going to ask them to sort of dispel some of the myths that surround their own identity, as well as trans and neurodivergent identities in general. Yes, can I come to you, Georgie?
Hi, folks. It's lovely to be here. My name is Georgie Williams. My pronouns they, them. I am also an insights and content analyst here at LGBT Great. In terms of my personal professional background, I am transgender. I'm also neurodiverse. I've been diagnosed with dyslexia. I also have not formally diagnosed ADHD. This is something that I'm personally aware of through guidance from professionals in the psychology industry. My background was originally psychology before I ventured into the world of gender and sexuality inclusion. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Shrey, do you mind just repeating what that first question was around misconceptions for me?
Yeah, what misconceptions do people have about your identity as well as the community, like trans and or neurodiverse communities in general, that you would like to dispel? Personal reflections.
I'll keep it relatively brief because
Okay.
I know that our other panelists are going to have a lot to say in this capacity. But with neurodiversity, I will say that there is still an enduring stigma regarding learning disabilities. Dyslexia is a learning disability, but it's not an intellectual disability, which is something that people often believe. Dyslexia for me has had huge advantages. I had a foray into data coaching and teaching coding and quantitative statistics, and my management of numbers was actually improved in my opinion by my dyslexia, because my dyslexia improves my digit retention. And with regards to my trans identity as well, I mean, misconceptions, we could go on for hours talking about that. But what I will say is that there are still ideas about what the trans identity means. There are also ideas about how people look when they are trans, how they're supposed to communicate themselves to people. And there is this discomfort that exists around how to have conversations with trans people, because there are these misconceptions about it being an impossible subject for cisgender people, so people who aren't transgender, to navigate. So hopefully today's conversation is going to make things a little more accessible for conversations about neurodiversity and conversations about trans experiences in the workplace too.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I completely agree. And it's so cool that I mean, your digital retention skills are high. And we were talking about like the Heschler test, right? And how like the spiky profile. And I just find it fascinating. Yeah, but we do discuss that more in detail later, if possible. But can I come to you, Dr. Weena, for some intros and backgrounds and the misconceptions about your own identity and the community?
Hi, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be party to this amazing discussion today. A personal message to Alex. Apologies. As a Greek person and as ADHD, I do tend to talk a lot and quite fast. So not intentional, but I cannot help it. So my background, a little bit of a weirdo here. I started with medicine. I went to economics. I've had 25 years of working in financial services. I'm actually an advisory member group at a CIC, which is a community interest group called GAIN. Huge acronyms, obviously not for neurodivergent people, but that stands for Group for Autism, Insurance, Investment, and Neurodiversity. And as of very recently, I've started my own social enterprise because I believe very much in purpose and really finding what is our own purpose as people individually and collectively, and really sort of demonstrate that together we are definitely stronger. We don't need corporate affirmation or indeed governmental, but things that I find in my community being the neurodivergent sort of community, really stereotypes, and people are avoiding to engage with us because they think it's a topic that we don't want to discuss. So they kind of prefer more to go into their own sort of cave and cocoon of making their own inferences, really celebrate their own biases without being respectfully curious and ask questions. What makes you tick? What do you appreciate? What do you like? What you don't like? Like treating each other as human to human. I'm a massive, active ally for the LGBTQ community. And because I speak very quickly, I'm trying to actually say things slowly. And again, anything to do intersectionality. We are so much more than what 1 or 2 or 10 things actually might suggest. So let us all celebrate and shout out from the rooftops who we are and all these glorious many compartments that actually make us. Thank you.
Ah, that was beautiful. No, I completely agree. And this focus on intersectionality is so important. And I mean, one thing that I completely agree with in terms of like this sort of idea of neurodiversity and like people not being very comfortable talking to you about it. I always say that we should explore more and the intent matters more than, like you have to understand the person. That's fine. If you like everyone, knowledge evolves. And I think that was brilliant. Can I quickly come to you, Zoe, now? If you don't mind. Also, happy birthday, Zoe. Everyone wish Zoe a happy birthday. It's her birthday.
Thanks, Shreyas. Thanks for coming to me. My name's Zoe. I'm an ESG client coverage associate for MSCI in New York. I'm also Greek and I also speak very quickly. So I will try to speak slowly as well. If you could just kind of repeat the question and kind of where you want me to take it and start. I think everyone's done a great job kind of going over backgrounds and filling in things. Kind of what do you want me to start?
No, I was just asking like what sort of misconception would you like to dispel about your own identity and the wider community, transgender and neurodiverse communities?
I think Georgie made a great comment about how it's supposed to look a certain way. For me and myself, I was born and raised in Alabama in the Deep South, kind of oldest Greek male, immigrant family, working in a parents' restaurant, like very my big fat Greek wedding, as Dr. Vina knows all too well. So it was one, like a lot of expectations about gender and gender roles and what that looks like and what that should be like. So someone that went to college, in the Deep South, and I guess also I have very much an American perspective, kind of it just reinforces that, especially in Greek life in terms of like fraternities and sororities. And I look on my Instagram and like all my friends are 25, 26 and they're engaged and getting married. And then I chose to move to New York and start my career. And then you think, okay, well, like, what are we saying about these gender roles? Like, obviously, I think a lot of women that come to New York, they want to focus on their careers and build themselves up. Whereas if you might be in the South, you might be more, I'm generalizing, but people are getting married sooner and starting families, whereas New York or these other coastal cities, people are thinking about their careers. So there's that one element to kind of first address. It's going to look different and everyone's kind of on their journey as well. I had like a very public transition too. Like I didn't come out and I couldn't come out. I was in Alabama. So we can kind of dive into this later, but it was, I guess we'll kind of start planting the seeds now about what that looks like when you're in Alabama and you're very much still in the closet, because I think what makes trans identity so unique and so different is there's no hiding it. And I talk with my pride group, with our gay pride leader or our lesbian pride leader, they can mask them like M-A-S-K, not like mask femme. They can help mask that identity and they don't have to walk up to someone and be like, hi, my name is Joe and I'm a gay man. You're never gonna know. Versus when I show up and when I walk into a room, it's like, my name's Zoe, and people are like, are you a she or a they? Are you liquid? What are you? There's no hiding it. So it's from the jump, you already are visible, exposed, and out. So I kind of pin that there. So it's a different experience specifically to the trans community within our queer families. So it's starting there, and then as a result, what are the ramifications of that? What happens? How do you interact? How do you move and exist in this world? So I'll toss it back
100%.
to you now, and we can get it going.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant, because I actually, while you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that like it's many times it's much harder for trans people, as you said, to mask their identity. And I mean, in that way, I personally feel so privileged, because a lot of people think, okay, like that's it. They don't care about like anything else. And I feel like many times when I go back home, especially, like it's much easier for me to fit in and sort of change, so that I'm not like discriminated against actively. But yeah, those very salient points, I must say. And great seeds for the conversation have been planted. I will concur. And the next question for you all: what are some of the biggest obstacles that you have personally faced as a transgender and or neurodiverse individual during the recruitment process specifically? And if I can come to you, Dr. Weena, first, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Can I just also very quickly, just big love to everybody. But Zoe, the way that you actually shared with us on the cultural background, I mean, immigration, massive pressures there, because I've got many obviously Greek Cypriot friends, and everybody else, any other sort of obviously nationality, but particularly with them because of the DNA. It's so much pressure from the parents who say, I don't even want you to speak the language, because I want you to sort of fit in. I want you to be like the local. I want you to do exactly whatever everybody else does. And typically the everybody else means societal sort of pressure and majority. What if you're different? What if you choose a different way? And these pressures from society, and you know what, that kind of getting married, having the kids and all this doesn't work for everybody. And I'm speaking very openly as a person who hasn't worked for me. So, and I know we're getting recording. I know it will be actually on YouTube, but this is my story. This is my truth. So I salute you, and we stand together, because we are all humans and we all actually want to enjoy our own journey in life. And that's exactly what we need to sort of celebrate. So when it comes to interview stage, I've always been sort of told that I'm so flamboyant and, big on mannerism and gesturing because I'm Greek, or, what did you say earlier about the vitamin D supplements? Because I probably have too much sun in my veins, and therefore people didn't know. And therefore they would always sort of rush out of a need to categorize each other, because I think by categorizing, it makes it easier for you to be able to sort of, deal with people. So they would pigeonhole me as somebody who's awfully active, very chatty, very this and the other. So jumping onto judgment. And as an ADHD person, I can tell you that if I find a connection with a question, I will dwell on for, good part of the time. And I don't do it because obviously I want to skew the results or anything, or because I don't know where to put the full stop, but I really feel engaged. And this is where, obviously discrimination, misjudgment actually comes in, because people kind of go like, well, you don't know how to play the game. You don't know how to sort of, perform. And it's seen almost as a weakness, rather than, look at me, I'm engaging. I want to sort of share more. All this oversharing. People often say to me, you overshare, Veena. And is there a problem? So yeah, people pigeonhole you. They run into their own bias. And if what you basically project, being rather unfiltered and raw, doesn't go down very well with them, then obviously they put you in the difficult arena. So the amount of times I've been called difficult or aggressive or bossy, honestly, nowadays I'm called more weird, and I'm like, yeah, all the way. Keep it up. I stop you. Thank you.
No, I love that. Because I personally, I've been called weird, and I'm like, that's brilliant, because I don't want to be typical. I'm sorry. Like, the thank you, call me that. And I actually relate personally so much, because I go on these tangents. Like I become so garrulous as well. I'm like, oh, I'm going to keep talking about this very specific topic that I love. And I mean, I know, because I work very closely with Georgie. This is perfect. Georgie, what do you have to say about this?
About your tangents, or which I'm welcome for, because we do the same to each other. What I will say actually is I have 2 points to make, one regarding neurodiverse, recruitment experiences, and one regarding trans recruitment experiences. With neurodiverse recruitment experiences, one of the hardest things for me was getting on a non-hospitality career ladder. My neurodiversity made me very good at working in hospitality, which I started at 15. And I did well in that kind of environment, but I wanted to move into having salaried work instead of being paid by the hour. And I thought that after getting my undergrad in psychology, I went on and got a master's in gender at the London School of Economics. I thought, okay, well, surely I'll be able to get my foot in somewhere. And actually, one of the things that I really struggled with was standardized testing. I struggled with the way that interviews were designed as well, in terms of putting someone in the hot seat. Now, I can improv my way out of many things, as my team will probably attest to. But at the same time, I struggle with my short-term memory recall. My working memory is impacted by my dyslexia. Shrey, you mentioned at one point that kind of the spiky graph of skills, which is what we see in the WAIS-4, the Wechsler Adult, I believe, intelligence scale. The WAIS-4 is a psychometric test for assessing neurodiversity. And this was what was used to diagnose my dyslexia. And on that, I've got great long-term memory, I've got great verbal skills, but my working memory is impacted. And an environment like a job interview, being put on the spot where someone says, you know, part A, part B, respond to these, I often feel like I don't land the point, because I'm trying to say my response, but then I lose track of what I was being asked by the end of it. And this is where I will also give big credit to Alex Gabbett, who's on the call, who was the person who interviewed me for my role at LGBT Great, gave me my interview questions in advance. And not only did that make me feel comfortable in what I was delivering in my interview, but that was also such a fantastic indicator of, we understand neurodiversity, we understand what practical accommodations look like. And I'll make a very short comment as well about you know, getting into any kind of corporate adjacent industry as a trans person. My God, I mean, do you ever really want to risk being open about your trans identity at the initial recruitment phase? Not really. I can say that, you know, as someone who, you know, I still very much pass as a cis woman, as much as I'm working on that. And it's something that I very much had to use to obfuscate my identity and keep myself safe at times, especially because I had very early in my career a salaried job where I found out that my manager was transphobic whilst I was still in the closet at work. And that determined that I wasn't going to come out for the rest of my year and a half working at that company. So yeah, there's so many blockades faced by neurodiverse people and trans people that I do believe that we actually have more in common than not, in terms of having to constantly explain our identities to the people that are supposed to be paying our bills.
No, that's, I mean, like, while you were saying that, I remember my like manager in my last job, he was also very transphobic. And like I remember one day I dressed like some, like, in a very femme manner, and he was like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this and stuff?" And he was like, "Oh, it's a joke," but it was not really a joke, and that really hurts you. And he was also part of the recruitment process itself. And I mean, I personally, what I do, or what I've like done previously, is always try to like mask my identity as well as a trans person, because I'm like, oh, if they find out, I don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to be accepting? And obviously, like, how do we manage their discomfort? Because I don't care about their discomfort, but I want to get the job. I want to get my bills paid. And I mean, can I come to you, Zoe? Because I know we talked about like Gen Z coming into the sort of workspace, and how like their unique skill set like many times offers quite a lot of things, but not experience, because obviously we're so young. How that has affected you personally?
Yeah, thanks. I think to kind of build on this in the recruitment process, with Gen Z, it's so funny that earlier this week I just did a panel at work on the intergenerational panels, and they had a boomer, a Gen X, a millennial, and I was the Gen Z representative. And it was really cool to see them bring in these different generations and talk about what it was like when they started their careers and kind of moving through that. So like you have all the misconceptions and talking about like working pre-internet and post-social media and '08 financial crisis and dot-com bubble and then COVID and pandemic. So every generation they have their psychological traumas and things they go through. But I think for Gen Z, we obviously had to deal with the pandemic. So when we started our careers, like for me, kind of circling back, I graduated in December 2019, a semester early from Ole Miss. I was like, get me out for a lot of reasons. And I thought 2020, brand new decade, can't wait to start my career. Obviously, you fast forward 3 months, pandemic lockdown. Who is hiring young Gen Z talent right out of college then? I don't know. And I'm in Alabama. I didn't have like these opportunities to all these big recruiting firms and everything else that was happening. So then you kind of revert into, okay, I'm going to do what I love and my passions and try to survive. So I'm really passionate about storytelling and journalism. So I was interviewing people about sustainability and climate change. I needed to make some extra cash. So I got my real estate license in Birmingham because then I had some autonomy. I could manage myself. I could, work hard, hustle, great grind the Gen Z way, go after, chase leads, sold a couple properties. I worked for a blockchain crypto company startup selling and deforesting land when like blockchain was the rage in like 21 and 22. And then of course, I'm helping out in my parents' restaurant. You have to when you're doing big lunches in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, and you have to go from 1 week you're serving 250 to next curbside pickup. How do you help out? How do you assist? So with all that being said, and you grow up in that culture, like as Dr. Vina was saying, like my parents always wanted me to not work in the restaurant and to go and follow my dreams and do what I love. So that's kind of this immigrant mentality. It's like, we're going to come here, we're going to work in the restaurant. You can go and do what you want. And for me, it was like a long process of figuring out myself, who I am, what I want to do. And so I really had to take a step back and be like, I want to live and work in New York. I want to finally come out and start transitioning, and I want to work in the ESG and climate space. And so for me, I didn't have any connections in New York. So I just went down LinkedIn and I was just adding people and writing messages and reaching out to people. And I started with two communities, the Greek community, because that's my roots, and then also the LGBTQ community. And for me, I think this is now kind of going into the recruitment process. So much of it is already from the jump having to explain myself. And it's like, hi, my name's Zoe. I'm a trans woman in Alabama. But when you're writing those messages, like my LinkedIn was still very much John with a shaved head for my realtor profile because I wasn't out in Alabama because I wasn't comfortable being out. So, and I have a great photo on my LinkedIn too of it if you're curious to go check it out, of like the headshot compare and contrast. So it's starting to realize like when there's so much hate and laws being passed and people are leaving, you have to think about why they're leaving and why they're not out. So I always had to explain myself from the jump. And I was so curious when you were showing in the beginning, like who is comfortable being out. Like for me was like, I can't move to New York and then start this job as, my past dead name and then come out later. It's like, I'm doing this from the beginning and I don't care if I lose 99 jobs because they don't want to hire some trans girl from Alabama that has no work experience. I will find the one. And I'm very grateful I did find the one at MSCI where I was going through it and you're reaching out to people. And then one person, and this would help me so much. I DM'd an MD at the firm. For some reason, he got back to me. He's like, let's talk. We talked. He listened to my story. They were doing a rotational program for young talent. And that's kind of speaking to, you want to attract young talent. You want to bring young people in. You want 5 years of work experience. We don't have that. And we're certainly not going to have 5 years of work experience in this specific role you want. So it's thinking about what are you really hiring for? Because every organization, I feel like they're going to train you. They're going to teach you the content. They're going to teach you what we do. They're going to teach you how you want to sell it. So it's thinking about, I want to be trained. I want to learn. I want to grow and develop. just give me a chance. So it's thinking about, okay, he took time to say, okay, who is this person from Alabama? They're trans, they're coming out, they're at the beginning stages of their journey. Put me into the process, and then the process was awesome because you're following up with the recruiter to walk me through your resume, and then you're kind of speaking through everybody. And then like one final story, you do all the rounds of interviewing and you get to the end. And I remember it was with our MD of client coverage. She runs all the sales organizations across ESG, index, analytics, real assets. And I forgot to mention, I'm also very ADHD, if you can't tell, and I'm loud and I'm Greek and I speak with my hands. And I am on Teams and I get ready early and I go to the interview and I sit down and I'm there. It's like 9:15, interviews at 10, and it's 10 and it's 10:02 and it's 10:05 and it's 10:09. I'm like, where is she? I forgot to hit the join now button on the call. So I joined 9 minutes late and I'm like, I have blown it. That was it. You did all this work. You finally got someone to kind of listen and take you in. And she was able to see past that. So I think it's also showing like a little bit of grace and empathy that there's a lot of moving parts and we're trying to figure it out and we're all doing our best. And then to be like, okay, things happen. You're not familiar with this. So thinking about how can we give grace where it needs to be done and kind of move through it. So all that being said, like I'm very happy to have landed in New York and at MSCI. And like when you're given a chance to then go on and talk and explain, it's such an educational opportunity and it's great. Just like give a chance and being not thinking just because you see something, there might be a lot more underneath the surface.
Oh, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I believe that I like completely agree. This is one of the things that organizations should definitely do, have that sort of flexibility in their process. Because I mean, I have like in India, and I mean, you talked about culturally sort of different narratives, right? In India, I mean, the hierarchical sort of structure of organizations is very obviously prominent, whereas relatively in the UK, it's different. It's much flatter relatively. So yeah, in India, I was always masking. No question about it. In recruitment, I was like, if you are 2 minutes late to the interview, you're out. There's no question about it. So it's like completely sort of different space culturally as well. And it's very interesting to see how like, especially with like Greek background in Alabama going to New York, that's brilliant. But yeah, I'm so happy that you got the job and now you're working there. And MSCI, shout out to MSCI, I love them. Like great client. Okay, another question for you all. What concrete steps can organizations take to ensure application forms and interview processes are free from bias and welcoming for trans and neurodiverse applicants? Georgie, can I come to you?
It's a big question, and I feel like there are a host of different things that we could do. We would be here all day talking about what different accommodations look like. I would say that being mindful of how people are screened is very important. So I'm thinking especially about the trans community, where having that diversity of thought in an interview process is important as well. Where possible, having interview panels that have a host of different perspectives as well helps eliminate biases. I think regarding the application process, allowing for accessibility accommodations in that process is also super important. I'll say that, in the modern world, one of the best things in terms of accessibility is that we do the majority of our work on computers now. I wasn't diagnosed with my dyslexia until I was 18, so I did my mainstream education without a diagnosis. But I did have a teacher who noticed that what I contributed in class and what I got down on paper starkly different, and that I was struggling to get things down on paper. And I was allowed, I had the great fortune to be given permission to do my exams in school on a computer instead of writing them down. And my grades jumped by 2. I was averaging C's and I started getting A's. And so yes, technical accommodations is very important. Allowing people to submit everything online. Most of us do that now, but I do think it's still very useful. And I think, being very mindful of how we prep people for interviews as well, as I mentioned, providing questions ahead of time, providing a brief for how that time's going to be spent as well. And also being conscious of how people engage in those interviews. I've done pre-university courses at Cambridge University for students, teaching them social psychology. And I had a student many years ago now who came up to me at the end of the first class, and he said, listen, I just want you to know that I'm autistic. And if I don't make eye contact with you, I promise you I'm still listening. And I said, my God, if you think that that's the thing I'm concerned about, I do not care. I said, you look wherever you want, as long as what you're contributing is informed and responsive to what we're discussing, then I don't care. And that student is still my most accomplished, successful student. He did incredibly well on the course. When I assessed him, his final assessment was a presentation to me. I did not assess on tone of voice. I did not assess on eye contact. I assessed on what he was sharing with us in terms of the content and how well he reflected what we'd covered in the curriculum. Focus and attention looks different in an interview if you're a neurodiverse. I'll be entirely honest right now. I've been listening to all of you and knitting because I focus better when I do something with my hands, right? So when we assess somebody for focus, for attention, for comprehension of information in an interview, we have to step back from our neurotypical assumptions of what that looks like.
Oh no, that was brilliant. I completely agree, because this idea that everyone has to be exactly the same in terms of presentation styles, in terms of focus, in terms of attention, is just, I think we should just dispel it, because everyone is different. And I mean, many times I personally feel like I watch someone in social media and I look at them and I'm like, oh, I want to emulate them. But maybe I actually don't want to emulate them. I want to be who I am, and it's fine. I mean, I can be professional. And I've seen some people being like, in corporate context as well, very like flamboyant and like just talking like their heart out, and like actually swearing as well just because they want to. And I feel like I personally love that. It's not accepted.
I'll make a final comment and say that, yeah, how we engage the body as well is different when you're neurodiverse. In fact, anyone who's seen me talk in person has probably seen I have a hairband that I fiddle with when I'm talking. I'm always doing something with my hands because that's how my brain works. And yeah, the idea of sitting still and always making eye contact. Yeah, very neurotypical ideas of what being professional looks like. My output is very bloody good. But how I get there just looks different to neurotypical people.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Dr. Wheeler, any thoughts from you?
Absolutely. Oh my God, Georgie. And we just write a book together. Everything of what you said completely resonates. There's one thing I cannot tolerate, and that's called homogeneity. Why, do we expect everybody to look, behave, talk like everybody else? That's not going to give us evolution as humankind, or indeed is going to keep us alive. I wanted to actually now speak a little bit as a behavioral economist, in the sense that there's things that we don't sort of, we don't see. So the panel, the interviewer sort of panel, how representative are they? I've worked for most of my life in the square mile, in finance, pale, male, stale, obviously being the stereotypical sort of appreciation, but that's the truth. I mean, how can you connect with me? I am the pale bit, probably, away from Greece over 25 years, definitely, but not the rest. So we need to be representative for people to connect with us. That's one thing. Language. Trias, you actually said earlier that somebody approached you saying, what's wrong with you? That is the language that we should not, sort of use. And language is so important. We do not want to advertise how neuro-inclusive or any other intersectionality sort of inclusive we are in a glossy brochure. I want to see that in the way that you advertise the role. I want you to sort of use the less is more. I don't want a long-winded sort of job spec. You know what they say about, certain traits. For me, as a woman, I always have to sort of, tick every single box before I feel empowered enough to apply. Come on. Is it a sales, function? Is it something that needs to stay behind the scenes? Try and ascertain whether this person likes to work you know, in their own environment, or like me, love to engage with people. You try to lock me in a room, I will freak out. I'll probably die. You know, it's a biological sort of, you know, death imminent. So don't try and fit people according to the previous sort of, you know, job titles. Fit them in as to what the tendencies, the natural tendencies are all about, you know. And the last thing, various formats to interviews. This is what we have to actually, you know, offer a variety. Get people to feel empowered. Get people to actually feel they're part of this sort of, you know, process. They're not the ones being judged. They're not, you know, they are the ones who are actually given the empowerment and the strength and the liberation, you know, to also choose you, because you're gonna be a damn good employer. And that's it, I think.
Oh, completely. Those are such concrete steps as well. Like you can implement them, and they're so cost effective. I was reading a study about how cost effective it is to make your workplace more inclusive, as well as the recruitment process. So it's not even expensive. It just is all about awareness. So yeah, definitely agree with all of that. Zoe, can I come to you for any final thoughts? I know we have 2 minutes, so yes.
Yeah, I'll make it quick, as the Greeks are known for. I agree with everything Georgie and Dr. Vina said 100%. I can give an example in practice. When I was going through my recruitment process at MSCI, you do this, walk me through your resume, the other interviews. The final interview was supposed to be like a super day in New York, which is very common in finance. We're gonna bring all of our applicants into the office. They're gonna present and do things. Now, that works great, and I think that's awesome. And I would have loved to have been able to do that. But thinking about where they're hiring from is really those pools, people in New York already working there, living there. I'm in Alabama. It's hard for me to then think about, okay, how am I gonna get up there? Do I have money for a flight? Do I have money for a hotel? Can I take off work? Can I do this, this, and this? I was like, look, I know you said your super day is in January. Somebody else offered me a job earlier. I want to get to New York more than anything else in the world. Is there any way to speed up this process? I don't want to go with them. I really want to live and work at MSCI. And they're like, yes, let's be accessible. How can we make this work for you? They bumped up the interviews. They sped up the process for me. They let me do it all virtual and online. So when we think about how can we accommodate the who, what, when, where, why somebody, it's like thinking about all of that, and it all comes to play and come together. And I just really appreciated that throughout the entire process with MSCI, and thinking about how can we best work with you. And I just am so thankful for it. So thinking about that as well, just kind of add it all in.
Oh, that's so and I mean, that's like the stuff that Dr. Weena talked about and Georgie talked about in practice. And I love that. Again, MSCI, big shout out. Be like MSCI in terms of the recruitment process. We don't have any more time, unfortunately. We could have gone on for hours, I suppose. I haven't even started speaking, in all honesty. But thank you so much for the panel. I mean, thank you all. You were brilliant. I learned so much personally. I hope all the people who watched this today also learned quite a lot. And yeah, there have been no questions, which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but hey, it is something. But hey, everyone, thank you for joining today. And yeah, I'll see you all soon on another webinar. And thank you for all the panelists. Have a good one.
Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.